Fusion Mobile, quality e-learning experience on the go.
Welcome to Fusion Mobile e-learning platform. My name is Okeibuno, and the subject before us is agricultural science, and in this lesson we will be looking at the topic routine management practices in farm animals. Routine management practices in farm animals. And under this very topic, we will be looking at the various routines, okay, the various routine practices that are involved in managing of farm animals. Okay, here they are listed out. But first of all, what do we mean by routine management? Just as the name implies, routine management practices. Okay, a routine is something you do like a ritual. Okay, something that something that comes on and on, like every day, every week, each time you have to repeat that practice. You call it a routine. Okay, so these routines or these practices, okay, that are carried out from time to time on farm animals in order to ensure that they are safe, they are healthy, they are at optimum production, is what we call routine management practices. Now, in these under this heading, we have selection, we have culling, we have ear notching, we have tattooing, we have chaining, we have branding, debeaking, and of course, talking about debeaking, you can include dehorning there. Okay, you can remove the beaks of birds, and also you can remove the horns of animals. Okay, then of course we have castration. Now we will go on to look at the various practices and their advantages, and as well as their disadvantages. Okay, first of all, selection. We've talked a lot about selection. We've talked about selection when we talked about when we talked about animal health. We've also talked about selection in the previous topic, and then we're also looking at selection here. So let's not overflog the issue of selection. Okay, you know, selection, as it implies, talks about getting the best of the farm animals, okay, within the farm, and using these very best farm animals to procreate or to reproduce in order to perpetuate those fine qualities that you have found in those farm animals, okay, that you're keeping aside. And of course, remember, in selection we talked about natural selection, we talked about artificial selection. In natural selection, we looked at it from the angle of survival of the fittest, and in artificial selection we talked about selection based on progeny, based on family, based on pedigree, and we talked about selection based on mass, okay, mass selection. Now, talking about selection, what are the advantages? The advantages, you see, the best is selected. You're not going to do selection and pick the worst of them all and keep them within the farm. You pick the bad ones and fling them off, sell them off. Okay, you can kill them for a meal and all that, but the best is kept to perpetuate fine qualities, okay, within the farm, your farm animals. And of course, selection helps in reducing of disease spread. Now, what are the disadvantages? Selection can be tedious. Selection requires expertise. Okay, it's not something that a novice can handle. It requires somebody with keen focus, keen understanding of the kind of qualities that need to be perpetuated within the farm or amongst the farm animals. So it requires expertise and it could be tedious. Then talking about culling. Culling of farm animals has to do with, yes, it's a little bit to do with selection also, but in this case we are actually not just doing the normal kind of selection, but we are removing diseased animals from the farm animals. Now, there are a number of reasons that could give rise to culling of farm animals. That is, this method where you have to separate the farm animals that you do not consider their qualities, or you do not consider them fit to keep surviving or to keep living with the other farm animals. These reasons basically could range from excessive weight. You consider the weight to be rather too excessive and not healthy for the animals or for the birds. You have to take them aside. It could be due to excessive. The weight too is rather too light. Okay, rather too light to be considered healthy for that farm animal. It can be that meat production has greatly reduced. It can be for poultry birds, for instance, that the distance between the breastbone and the pelvic region has, become really short, like say 2 to 3 fingers, not so long. The bird is shrinking, and you may also want to cull a farm animal for reason of maybe broodiness, cannibalism, maybe yellow beak. The beak has become yellow. The shank, that's the leg, the shank of the animal, that's the leg. Okay, for instance, the birds, it has become yellow. All these are signs of diseases, and you don't want these animals that are infected to infect the other animals. So you quickly want to separate them from the rest of the animals. That is culling. Now, some of the advantages is reduction in cost of production. So you can imagine if you have all these animals that have these undesirable qualities, or at the very beginning of onset of diseases, you have all of them mixed with the others, and you are feeding, you'll be wasting money feeding farm animals. What you simply do is you remove the diseased animals, okay, so that you can reduce the cost of production. Then elimination of undesirable characteristics. You see, sometimes even these animals, they may be sick, but they still want to go on and mate and do all of that, and of course whatever diseases or whatever infections they may have, they will transmit to the others and likewise to their offsprings. So you want to reduce these undesirable, or rather completely eliminate the undesirable characteristics. Well, culling can be tedious. Yes, it can be tedious, but it is necessary. Ear notching. Ear notching has to do with cutting of the ears of the animals, giving certain marks to the ears of the animals using some very specific tools to either puncture the ear, that is, make holes in the ears, or cut it in certain ways. And such ways can be interpreted by the farmer. Of course, only the farmer who owns the animals will know what those marks could mean. It could mean it can be able to help the farmer to identify the animals. It can also help the farmer to know the number of animals in the farm, or it can even help the farmer to know the particular number of that very farm animal, okay, in his list of farm animals. And ear notching, okay, you see the numbers can be easily seen, okay, that is, the cuttings can be easily seen, okay, and if it is cut in form of a number, those numbers can be easily seen. easy to perform. Okay, there are very simple tools that you can use to just do the cutting, maybe just once, and it removes that part of the skin. Now, disadvantages: it can cause infections if the cut is not very well treated. Okay, it can cause infections, and sometimes the cutting can heal up and cover that space, and you won't even see the number, or you won't see the cutting again, and then you have to repeat the process. And not to forget, the animal is not smiling when you're cutting its skin. Then tattooing and branding. Tattooing, okay, talks about the use of metal pins that are constructed in such a way, or in such ways that they represent some numbers, or they can carry some numbers. Now that these numbers are pinned to the ears of the animals, especially to the ears of the animals, to the nose, okay, either way, depending on where the farmer wants to pin these pins. And by that, okay, when that is done, the farmer can be able to identify his animals. Branding, on the other hand, talks about using tools to carve numbers on the body of the animal. It can be carved on the leg, on the thigh, it can be carved on the side, it can be carved, a conspicuous part of the animal. Okay, these numbers can be carved on it by way of branding. Now, what are the advantages? These numbers are easy to see, very easy to see them. There's no adverse effect, okay? No adverse effect, that is considering it in the terms of economic value right now. You're not very likely to lose your cattle, okay? And also, you're not likely to incur a lot of costs by doing that, because the implements are quite handy. Meanwhile, for tattooing, the pins can fall off. If the pins do fall off, what happens? You have to repeat the process, and it becomes difficult to identify the animal. And talking about pain, well, in branding, you can have hot iron branding, you can have cold branding. The hot iron branding is painful, okay, because the instrument that you use has the tip at red hot heat to be able to carve on the body of the animal. You can imagine the pain. Oh my God. And you can imagine the cry and the moan from the animal. You may not want to do that. So you may want to consider the cold branding. Okay? The cold branding, the branding is the tip, okay, of the instrument used for the branding is maintained at about minus 70 degrees centigrade. So it's really cold, and with that, okay, you can do a painless carving of whichever number or whatever numbers you want to inscribe on the body of the animal. I think that's a little bit more humane, so you may want to consider that. Now, castration. Castration is done basically on male animals, okay? Male animals. Castration is simply the removal of the male sex organs from the body of the animal in question. Now, these animals that are castrated are usually not desired or required for breeding purposes. They are usually such animals that are basically for meat production, basically used for meat production, not for breeding. So the sex organs can be removed since the farmer doesn't need them. And such processes like castration can be done through the use of open incision, through the use of the bodizo, and through the use of the rubber ring. Yes, 3 ways of castrating animals. The open incision is usually very painful. Okay, you have to use a very sharp razor blade or scalpel, okay, to cut the scrotum open and then scrape out the testes. You can imagine the process. Oh well, it's none is actually easy. Talking about the use of the bodizo is pinned or pressed firmly to the top of the scrotum, and it is pinched so with a lot of force. Yes, the aim is to squeeze the spermatic cord and cut it off the supply of blood. Okay, the scrotum doesn't cut off, no, it is a spermatic cord. When you squeeze it tightly, the spermatic cord which supplies blood to the testes is squeezed and crushed, and therefore it can no longer work. So the same applies to the use of the rubber ring, only that the rubber ring will be less painful, okay, than the bodizo or the scalpel. So maybe you might want to consider the use of the rubber ring. It is called illustrator. Okay, it also squeezes the spermatic cord and cuts it off the supply of blood, okay, and thereby the scrotum or the testis no longer receives blood to assist in the production of semen. And what could be the possible reasons for anyone to want to make an animal go through such a such pain? The reason could be to prevent indiscriminate breeding. Okay, you don't want that particular animal to keep breeding or to perpetuate itself. You can castrate it. You can also castrate animals for the sake of their meat quality, because castrated animals are usually bigger in size than the other animals. So you want a lot of meat from the animal, you can decide to castrate it so that you get plenty of meat, but it won't produce another offspring. You eat only that one, and that's the end of it. Okay, now disadvantages: it could cause pain, and infection is possible. It could cause pain and loss of blood. Okay, the animal can lose blood, especially with the open incision method. A lot of blood can be lost. Then infection is possible if the process is not expertly done. Then debeaking and dehorning. Debeaking, what do we mean by debeaking? Cutting off the beaks of birds. Sometimes you see birds, they start to peck themselves and give themselves injuries. A bird lays eggs, and the next thing, it's using its beak to open the egg, and it starts drinking it. No. At such point, what do you do to the bird? You say, come, you don't have good training, cut off the beak. Okay, so you remove the beak. And what does that help us to do? It helps to prevent cannibalism and injuries. Yes, injuries, talking about dehorning, for instance. Okay, when you remove the horns of animals, you see, they use it for defense, but at the same time they use it to attack themselves, and it could give them a lot of injuries. So you have to do what? Remove the horns. And how do you do this? You can use hot iron, put iron or knife, okay, put it in fire and leave it to get to red hot, as in red heat, and then you bring the knife out and you remove the horn. Okay, of course there are two horns usually, so you may have to put the knife back in fire again, or if it's hot enough, you remove the horns. Okay, you can use saw also to saw it off, to saw off the horns. And when you do that, you actually prevent the animals from getting a lot of injuries and from cannibalism. cannibalism, especially in the case of birds. You see them, they peg themselves, they drink their eggs and all that. Now, it could cause the animal pain, but not to worry. Sometimes some pains are necessary, okay, for better things to happen. Now, it may cause infection. So if you're going to dehorn and debeak, also be ready to treat the animals to stop them from being infected, okay, by reason of the cut that you have given to them. Now, the last on our list here, okay, of routine management practices is chaining of the animals. Okay, chaining is cheap and it's easy, okay, and the chains anyway can get stuck in objects, and you see the animal pulling, especially if it's, you know, one of those very stubborn bulls. The chain can cut. Now, when we talk about chaining, we also want to talk about restraining of animals. Okay, there are various ways of chaining. They are restraining the animal. Okay, chain talks about restrain. When you are chained, you are restrained. When you are chained in your hand, you are restrained in your hand. You can move your hand. When you are chained in your leg, you can move about. When you are chained in your body, you are completely held down. Okay, and it's the same with the animals. Some animals are so bullish and so fierce, you want to chain them all over and, you know, keep them in one place. What the hell? You don't want your animal, you don't want an animal misbehaving and bullying all the other animals. So you may want to chain your animal, keep it in a particular place, and, you know, keep it there until its senses comes back, until its senses return, and then it begins to behave like the other animals. Okay, so like I said, you can chain the neck, and tie it to a place. You can decide to chain the legs so that the movements are very limited. You can, you know, of course they don't have hands, so usually you don't want to chain the back legs, so it's the front legs that you chain. Okay, so the animal moves very slowly and does its tasks very slowly and responsibly too. Yes, so these are the various practices that the farmer, okay, of farm animals will usually carry out in its farm to ensure health, quality, and good production of farm animals, and good production of farm animals, and good good account. Okay, account, because talking about all of this, culling, notching, ear notching, you are keeping account, good records of your farm animals. So these are a number of the things that the farmer will do to keep his farm in optimum production, quality, and standard. Meanwhile, a few questions will pop up on your screen. Please do well to attempt them, and if you have any reason to go back through the video, please don't hesitate.